Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you're all very welcome. Thank you for coming to the Ryanair's press conference. Couldn't think of a more timely press conference where we announce a very modest expansion out of London in summer 2025 while we're growing like a social disease all over the rest of Europe. The UK continues to lose out on enormous growth opportunities because you have a Chancellor who hasn't a clue about how to deliver growth, has had 5 years to get ready for it, and yet has managed to screw it up in her first budget. The good news today is that we will open 7 new routes at London Stansted this year in 2025. 2 routes to Turkey, Bodrum and Dalman, 1 to Clermont-Ferrand, Munster, Lübeck in Germany, Linz in Austria and Reggio Calabria. We have a quick slide presentation and then and I will deal with the Chancellor's remarks as we work our way through the presentation this morning. So, Ryanair, as you know, is the UK's beloved airline. We're number 1 for lowest fares, number 1 for traffic, number 1 for coverage and choice, number 1 for on-time flights and the fewest cancellations and all the other wonderful stuff. We're also number 1 for coverage across Europe. This summer in Europe, we will add another 20 aircraft. 9 of which we still have to get delivery from Boeing, but we're reasonably confident we'll get all 20 aircraft. We will place those at 94 bases, 230 airports, 37 countries. The fleet this summer will be just over 600 aircraft, or 610 aircraft, with another 330 aircraft on order. We will carry 200 million passengers in the current year. Because of the Boeing delivery delays, our rate of growth next year will slow down probably to about 206 million. But all of that 6 million growth is going in continental Europe. Sadly, none of it is coming to the UK, where we are continuing to reduce some flights and frequencies from regional airports or increasing costs, which counterbalances the 7 new routes from London Stansted. We have been calling on the new Labour government to come up with a growth strategy. As we all know, despite having 5 years to prepare for government and to prepare a growth strategy, Rachel Rubbish in her first budget, the first initiative was to increase APD taxes on air travel. Nothing is designed to damage growth faster than increasing taxes on air travel. APD on short-haul flights to and from Europe will go from £13 to £15, a rate of tax of 33% on Ryanair's average ticket price of £45. Insane. And as a result, surprise, surprise, there is no growth. Rachel Rubbish then is, for the last week, coming up with the Boris Johnson dead cat strategy. Let's throw something up there on the table that might distract people. Let's talk about a third runway in Heathrow. The third runway in Heathrow, if they started shovels in the ground today, will not be here until about 2035 or 2040 at the earliest, long after Rachel Reeves and the Labour government have been voted out of office or replaced by somebody else. The third runway at Heathrow, and mind you, I noticed she's come up with no dates for the third runway at Heathrow. It's just she's going to start getting submissions on the third runway at Heathrow later on this summer. The third runway at Heathrow is a dead cat. If it ever arrives, it will be about 2040, 2045 or 2050. In fact, long after I've departed from Ryanair. So confident am I that we will not see it. It will not deliver any growth. The thing that will deliver growth is abolishing APD. It will deliver growth not just in London, it will deliver growth all across the UK. And that is the point I've made both directly in writing to Rachel Rubbish and the Treasury, but they seem determined to pursue a strategy that will deliver no growth. Ryanair has the lowest costs in Europe, way below every other airline, which is why we are the only airline in Europe that has dramatically grown our pre-COVID traffic. Pre-COVID, we were carrying 148 million passengers a year. This year, ended in March, we'll be at 200 million, and next year, including summer 25, will rise to 206 million passengers. Current developments, so we're seeing very strong post-COVID recovery. We have 340 aircraft on order, and here's the prize we've offered to Rachel Reeves. We deliver about 60 million passengers a year to the UK. Within 5 years, we could grow that by 50% to 90 million passengers. And all she has to do is abolish APD. It's a tiny amount of money, £4 billion. Less than 3% of the UK budget, about 1/4 of the cost of the mythical third runway in Heathrow that won't be delivered in my lifetime, or certainly not in her political lifetime. But scrapping APD would deliver growth not just into London, but across the regions of the UK, and it would be immediate. It would be this summer, it would be next winter, it would be the summer after. The airlines would respond by putting massive amount of incremental capacity into existing airports across London, Stansted and Luton, and the regions, Manchester, Gatwick, Manchester, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Bristol, Birmingham, all over the UK, and you can turn that tap on this year. And yet all they're holding a press conference, wittering on about starting consultation on the mythical dead cat known as the third runway in Heathrow. We're making market share gains across the UK, which isn't hard when everybody else is taking capacity out of the UK in response to these APD increases. The Draghi report has helpfully in Europe called for more competitive EU aviation. We need something similar in the UK, and it's not going to be delivered by a dead cat like the third runway at Heathrow. We need reform of air traffic control. NATS here is a shambles. It is incompetent, it is inefficient, it is understaffed. They need to fully staff the first wave of flights, particularly on Saturdays and weekends in the summer. And the government should be demanding that they protect overflights to Europe when the French are engaged in recreational striking on a regular basis during the summer. The critical thing to deliver growth in UK economy, UK aviation, is abolish APD, and do it now. Stop penalising UK citizens. The immediate beneficiary would be UK families going on holidays. 15 quid per ticket, a family of 4 would save 60 quid. You're putting money right back into people's pockets. You're delivering an enormous growth boost to the UK economy and to the regions of the UK as well as London. And yet all she can come up with 8 months into her government career is, we'll start consulting again on the third runway at Heathrow. Woo! Rubbish, which is why what we think of it. Sweden, Hungary, it had 3 Italian regions, Veneto, Giulia, Reggio Calabria, and the one that has Pescara in it, Abruzzo, have abolished the municipal tax this year. So governments across Europe are scrapping these taxes. They get it. They get it that the way to deliver growth is abolish these stupid and penal taxes. The UK government, if it really wants to restore competitiveness, if it really wants to deliver growth, simple, abolish APD. I wrote a letter to the Rachel Reeves on the 2nd of December, calling on her, if she was serious about delivering growth, abolish APD. I get a letter back this week from some dopey junior minister, James Murray, who's the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury. He helpfully told me that actually the rate of APD increase is only going up by £2 for those flying short-haul economy. That is 1% of an average airfare. £2 is 1% of an average short-haul economy low fare. I don't know what fucking airline this dopey git actually flies on that has economy airfares of £200. But the £2 is not 1% of an average airfare. But it probably shows you just how out of touch Her Majesty's Treasury are with fucking reality. The average fare, economy fare on, we only have economy, the average fare on Ryanair last year in the UK was £44 sterling. APD is currently £13 going to £15, and that is a penal rate of tax and something that should be abolished straight away. If Rachel Rubbish is serious about delivering growth, abolish aviation tax. We don't mind if she comes up with the third runway in Heathrow, although please understand it won't be delivered until 2040 or 2050 at the earliest. But at least while you're waiting for that dead cow to breathe life into that dead cat, can you please abolish APD and then allow us to get on with delivering real growth? We promised her in writing that actually if she abolishes APD, Ryanair would take its traffic from 60 million passengers in the UK to 90 million within 4 years. 50% growth. And that growth would be spread across airports across the UK. And all we get back was some dopey minister writing to us, oh, it's only gone up by 2 quid, and that's only 1% of a €200 average short-haul economy airfare. That's how fucking out of touch these people are with reality. In the UK, we have 22 airports, 13 bases, and look at the impact that you could have here if dopey Rachel would actually scrap APD. You're not just talking about growth in London, you're talking about growth in Bristol, Cardiff, Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester, Newcastle, Edinburgh. You're putting money back in people's pockets, hard-pressed families, going on holidays, visitors coming to the UK suddenly getting a benefit of 13 or 15 pounds in their pocket. You would absolutely engineer, you would absolutely dramatically, sorry, You would put a rocket under growth here, not just in air traffic and tourism, but spending in the regions, visitors coming to the regions, spending. You'd put a rocket growth under hotels, restaurants, entertainment facilities all over the UK. And it can be done today, tomorrow. We don't have to wait till 20, 30 or 40. And nor do you need to have worry about what Sir Sadiq Khan thinks about it either, when he has an occasional thought in his very small brain. So in the UK, we have 120 aircraft based here, an investment of 12 billion. We're operating 645 routes. We have just under 60 million passengers a year, and we believe we could grow that by 50% in the next 4 years. 30 million additional passengers coming to the UK. All you got to do is scrap APD. In Stansted in 2025, so we have 49 based aircraft, 1 new aircraft here. It's an investment of 5 billion. We're doing 171 routes, 7 new routes, some extra flights on existing routes, and we will grow Stansted traffic this year by about 5%. That's the slowest rate of growth we've had at Stansted in about 20 years. In Luton, again, 7 based aircraft, 700 million invested, 31 routes and some extra flights. And in Gatwick, there's no real growth at all, but Gatwick is small for us. APD damages UK growth. Rachel Reeves spent 5 years in as opposition spokesperson on finance. They went on elections, growth, 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 growth. And the first thing she did in her first budget was increase APD. No idea how to deliver growth. She has no fucking clue how to deliver growth. But she's able to distract everybody today with a press conference of, I'm now behind the 3rd runway in Heathrow, which might, if you were very lucky, get delivered by about 2040 or 2050. Long after my lifetime, sadly, certainly long after my career in Ryanair. I'm told EasyJet have announced that they'll move to Heathrow in 2040 or 2050 when the 3rd runway eventually opens. This is not going to deliver growth. Not this year, not in the life of the current government, not even in the life of the next government after this government. The only thing that will deliver real serious growth in aviation, in tourism, and particularly in the economy, not just for London but the regions, is abolish APD. Cost just 4 billion a year. And it would be self-financing with the surge in growth, employment, jobs in the tourism industry across not just London but the regions as well. Low-cost traffic essential for regional tourism. We put those flights back into those regional airports that have the capacity. They are able to deliver that growth today without having to worry about our 3rd runway in Heathrow or moving the M25 to create the space to build the 3rd runway in Heathrow. Heathrow and Gatwick runways won't grow until the mid-2030s or 2040. Now, we don't object to additional runways. If you build them, fine. It's just they won't be here for 10 or 15 years. And what's Rachel Rubbish going to do between now and then for growth? Abolish APD. Ryanair will deliver record growth if she scraps APD. In fact, we've committed to growing our traffic in the UK by 50%, from 60 to 90 million within 4 years if she abolishes APD. Here's our growth proposal. Scrap APD on all flights, and we'll deliver by we've gone to 90 million passengers. That's a 50% growth. 10,000 more Ryanair and support jobs. 30 new aircraft based here. That's 3 billion investment at UK airports. Almost the entire cost, or the 4 billion cost, of abolishing APD. Scrap APD and see a surge in traffic, jobs and tourism growth, and not just in London or the South East, but right across the regions of the UK and in Northern Ireland as well. Runways at Heathrow and Gatwick won't grow until 2030, 2035, 2040 or maybe even 2050 as well. In summary, we are the number 1 airline. We have the lowest fares and more choice. We are the only airline that has a real plan for delivering growth here in the next 4 years. We are also the only airline that has the aircraft orders to be able to deliver this growth in the UK. You are not getting this growth if the only strategy you have is to talk or waffle on about a 3rd runway at Heathrow for the next 10 or 15 years. You could deliver this growth now, and the Treasury has it within their capacity to do it now. Abolish APD. And don't wait another week, another month, another year. Do it today. And then stand back and watch the growth come, not just from Ryanair, but from all of the UK airlines. And to celebrate, I'm sure we have a seat sale, $29.99. Even our seat sale fares have gone up in the last couple of years for the $24.99 to sell as we celebrate our schedule in the UK. I'm joined today by Anya Murphy, who is far more intelligent than me. That is not setting the bar very high. She is our Director of Marketing and Distribution Partnerships. She's one of the people who are powering up Ryanair Labs and doing all the exciting stuff we're doing with the web and mobile and everything else. So if you have any intelligent questions, Anya will answer them, and if you have any stupid ones, I'll take them. Questions? Yes, sir.
By how much would you grow the UK passenger capacity if there's the APD within 4 years, what's
None.
the protection?
Zero.
Zero. So
There will be no growth in the... if APD continues to increase, as she's already announced...
APD is at this level.
well, APD is going from £13 to £15 on a short-haul ticket. There will be no growth. We won't allocate any additional aircraft to the UK, and nobody else has any significant aircraft deliveries either. And it's not just us. I mean, the other airlines, EasyJet, Jet2, BA, all calling to tackle APD. I mean, some of them are a bit more respectful. They want to just kind of reduce APD. We want to abolish it altogether. If you're serious about growth, and it's clear that Rachel Rubbish has no idea how to deliver growth, so we have to give her the ideas, abolish APD. It's a $4 billion cost. It will be paid back twofold within 12 months. Kate?
You've written to Reeves.
Yes. And she's written back. Well, no, actually, she got some dopey junior minister to write back, who clearly, I don't know what he's doing in the Treasury because he can't do maths. But nevertheless.
And you've spoken, obviously, publicly about it. What are the next steps? You know, if she doesn't abolish APD, what are you going to do? Are you going to
hold another press conference so that she doesn't have a clue how to deliver growth. She's talking complete and utter rubbish about the third runway in Heathrow when she knows. I mean, the only question you need to put to Rachel Reeves is, when do you expect the third runway at Heathrow to open? 2035, 2040, 2045 or 2050, take your pick. But will it be open in the lifetime of the current Labour government? 5 years? Not a chance. So it's a dead cat bounce. They're throwing something out there to distract you all, make it look like, ooh, and she's going to fight with Sadiq Khan. She's going to challenge the Mayor of London. What's he got to do with it? But it doesn't deliver any growth. Not for 5 years, not for 10 years. What will deliver growth? Abolish APD.
Would you consider going ahead with cutting UK routes? I know you mentioned that last year.
We have our capacity in the UK this year is flat. We have taken some capacity out of some of the regional airports. There's a little bit of capacity going into Stansted, but really it's very flat. And that is in a year when we're taking 20 aircraft this year. I mean, the UK typically accounts for about 40% of our business. We're adding 20 aircraft this year. We should be, adding 8 aircraft to the UK. We're going up by 1. Why? Because the first growth initiative Rachel Rubbish had was we're going to increase APD. I mean, this is somebody who spent 5 years in opposition. They got into government and spent 3 months telling us all that the cupboard was bare, there was no money. Unless you were a train driver or you were a junior doctor, in which case you could have as much money as you fucking want. And then they had a growth plan. What was the growth plan? Let's raise APD taxes. Like, clueless. And now that hasn't worked and the UK is not growing, let's come up with, distract everybody, let's have a dead cat, throw a third runway at Heathrow up on the table. And she had a big press conference this morning. Oh, I'm committed to a third runway at Heathrow in 2045 or something like that. It won't work. It doesn't deliver growth. And she knows that. But she's trying to distract everybody. Yes?
What about the other runways, Gatwick and Luton? They've been hinted at being expanded. Has that been part of your conversation? Really, would there be no benefit from additional runways there?
No. I tell you, there would be a benefit from additional runways. It's just the benefit will take place in the mid to late 2030s. I mean, all of them.
Gatwick's got 2 runways already.
Well, he actually hasn't. He's got a runway and a taxiway. I mean, Gatwick's plan for a second runway involves either tunnelling under the M25 or closing and moving part of the M25. Now, call me a cynic, but I don't... Gatwick's. Both of them. So I don't think either of them are realistic, but I'm all in favour of additional runways. We just need to understand that these additional runways will not be delivered in the lifetime of the current government. So she's not talking about delivering growth. She's just trying to distract you from the fact that she has no plans to deliver growth. Sorry, just a second, yes.
But have you discussed that? Has that been a point? Has that something you've called for? Has that been part of the conversation you've had with the Treasury? Have they given any signals on Luton or Gatwick?
No. I mean, we wrote to the Treasury in early December saying we would deliver you 50% traffic growth, not just at London but across the UK. All you have to do is abolish APD. And all we got back was a letter saying, well, actually, you don't understand the maths. APD is only going up by £1, and that's only 1% of an economy airfare. Like, they don't even know what they're fucking talking about. But and this is all a distraction. The big press event this morning about a second runway at Heathrow is just a distraction. You don't need a second runway at Heathrow, actually. You could grow today in Manchester, Birmingham. You could grow in Stansted. Luton has capacity for growth. There's additional slots at Luton. But Edinburgh, Glasgow, Belfast, and regional growth as well as London. I'm all in favour of additional runways, have been for many years. I support the third runway at Heathrow. I support the second runway at Gatwick. I support the second runway at Stansted. But just please understand, they're not going to be delivered for 10 or 15 years here. And what are we going to do, the UK going to do for growth between now of the next 5 years, the lifetime of this government? Nothing, because she hasn't got a clue on how to deliver growth. She thinks raising taxes is somehow going to deliver growth. Yes?
I wanted to ask about growth in relation to Boeing.
Yep.
You talked about how Ryanair is expecting these deliveries to come through. How tied is your delivery expectation to Boeing growing above the 38 planes a month output?
The delivery of the MAX 10s, at the moment we're getting 9 additional aircraft this before the summer of 25. They're all, the fuselage already in either Wichita or in Seattle. They're coming, so we're certain on those. We're then due the last 29 of the 8200 order come in August, September, October, November of this year, so we will have those for summer 26. And then we're a little bit in the lap of the gods. We need the MAX 10s are due to deliver in the first half of 27. So those deliveries are dependent on Boeing getting monthly production up to 38 by the end of this summer, and then getting permission from the FAA to go up to 42. I'm pretty confident under the Trump administration they will be much more pro-American manufacturing and American jobs, and I think the Trump administration will be much more supportive of Boeing's recovery, particularly if it involves making more American manufactured aircraft and selling more American manufactured aircraft. I don't think the Biden administration was particularly helpful to Boeing.
How was your trip to Seattle? Do you have anything to say on...
Long, painful. I did a 6.5-hour flight to Boston, 6 hours hanging around the Boston airport, and a 6.5-hour flight from Boston to Seattle. But I met with Stephanie Pope and the rest of the team there. I think there's definitely a new energy there. We've toured the shop floor. Morale is great, but why wouldn't it be? They've all got a 40% pay increase. But I think Boeing are beginning to turn the corner, right? I have a lot of faith and confidence in Stephanie Pope. I'm meeting Kelly Ortenberg in Dublin in middle of February. And I think there is now at least a management team who are there in Seattle, who get it, who are involved in the detail. And I would be very optimistic that Boeing's turnaround will continue and will accelerate. And I hope that many of those new Boeing aircraft will be based here in the UK when Rachel Rubbish comes up with a growth strategy that involves abolishing APD.
I also wanted to ask about staffing with the new online boarding passes. Do you expect there to be a reduction of staffing with this new initiative?
No.
I mean, even at airports? Or...
I mean, we still have to have ticket desks open at airports. But there will be less people at airports. In fact, there'll be almost nobody at airports paying the missed board or the boarding card reissue fee, because and that's the great upside of everybody going. We've about 75% of our people now have the online. Even I, God help me, have the boarding pass on my smartphone, or in my case, not very smartphone. There's about 25% that we have to convert to using it, and then nobody will ever again get stuck at an airport without a not having or arriving at an airport without the boarding card. Or if they have, they can actually download it and onto their smartphone there, and they never again have to pay a boarding card reissue fee. So there's nothing but upside.
Just a question, sorry, one final one about Ortberg. Is he coming to Dublin just to see you, just to see Ryanair?
I bloody hope so.
Okay.
Can't imagine he's coming to Dublin to see anybody else, and Aer Lingus fly fucking Airbus rubbish. So there's no point talking to them. There's a few leasing pirates in Dublin. I can't imagine he's coming to talk to them. But so I assume he's coming just solely to talk to me. Sometime around Valentine's Day. So I don't want to overread too much into it. But I think he's coming with roses and chocolates. I want to be wooed, and then wooed some more. Yes.
My TV. How can more Ryanair flights fit with net zero goals?
They can't fit with net zero goals, although the net zero goals are for 2050. These more Ryanair flights are taking place on new aircraft that have 20% more seats but burn 20% less fuel. So they will reduce the fuel consumption and the CO2 emissions by 40% per passenger. So it is growth. The growth will take place on much greener, more efficient aircraft. But we need to move away from this obsession with net zero by 2050 and start competing again now in 2025, 26, 27, 28.
And do you think sustainable aviation fuel is the future, or is that
No.
greenwashing?
Sustainable aviation fuel, nobody is producing sustainable aviation fuel in the volumes that the airlines are going to need. We have a 2% mandate in 2025, which we will just about meet, because the fuel companies are not producing enough SAFs. The only people who can produce SAFs are the fuel companies. They're not being incentivized by governments or by national governments to produce SAFs, so they're not producing it. And I suspect with Trump now in the White House, they're not going to produce any SAFs at all. So we do have EU mandates to get to 10% of SAFs by 2030. I don't think there's anybody any longer believes that they will be using 10% of SAFs by 2030. The world is moving away from some of all this environmental twaddle that we've had for the last decade. The Greens have been blown out of the water in almost every election that's taken place in Europe. And that's not to say that some of their agenda is wrong. It isn't. We do need to decarbonise. We do need to invest heavily in new technology that reduces fuel consumption, that reduces CO2 emissions. But what we do not need to do is to raise taxes on ordinary people or ordinary families going about their business, whether they're going on flights or they're driving their cars to schools or hospitals or to supermarkets. That is not going to alter or get us to net zero by 2050. More new technology, electrify the coming. Motor transport accounts for 26% of the EU, I'm talking EU figures, the EU CO2 emissions. Air travel accounts for 2%. By the mid-2030s, motor transport will largely have electrified, so that 27% will have gone to, 4 or 5. That is much more significant than anything you could do in aviation, because aviation only accounts for 2%. And yet we've treated aviation for the last decade as this kind of pariah. We're responsible for global warming, or we're not. And while we've been trying to kind of tax ourselves out of existence in Europe, the Chinese are opening up coal-fired power stations. The Germans have now reopened the coal-fired power stations because they couldn't get Russian gas. So we need much more practical. I think our economies and the wealth of our citizens depends on delivering growth now in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, which is why Rachel Rubbish's plans to discuss a third runway is a dead cat bounce, and her failure to scrap APD, which is the way forward for growth, not just in London, but across region UK, is the way forward. Anybody else, sir? Yes, sir.
I know you said if runway gets built at Heathrow, it won't
Yes.
be until 2040. What do you think the chances are that it actually does get built overall?
I would say the chances of a third runway in Heathrow are probably still odds against. It is an enormous. I mean, firstly, the airlines in Heathrow don't want it because the cost, I think, last was guesstimated at about 25 billion, which, in other words, about about 6-7 times the cost of scrapping APD. The airlines can't afford to pay for it. It does involve moving the M25, and I don't know how you actually go about moving the M25. Like, I don't see that sustainable. They better alternatives, but I am in favour of, I want more runways at Heathrow, I want more runways at Gatwick. There's room for a second runway in Stansted. Get on and build it. But don't believe that this is delivering growth. It will maybe, the only number that came out of the Rachel Reeves presentation that had some was that the OBR estimated that by 2050, a third runway in Heathrow would add 0.5% to GDP. Well, at least they got the date right, because 2050 is about as early as you go to see a third runway in Heathrow. So all of this, I have a growth plan. It's called a third runway in Heathrow. Well, great. She won't be in politics by the time, no matter how successful she is, she won't be in elected office by the time a third runway, if it gets built, will get opened. I don't personally think a third runway in Heathrow is likely. I suspect a second runway in Gatwick is more deliverable. A second runway in Stansted is certainly more deliverable, and some increased capacity at Luton is deliverable. But for the UK economy to grow, you have spare runway capacity in Birmingham, Manchester, Bristol, Cardiff, Exeter, Bournemouth, Glasgow, Edinburgh. There's lots of runways. There's lots of additional growth we could deliver this year, next year, the year after, if she just abolished bloody APD and get on with it. But she hasn't got either the wit or the bravery to do this. She's not really serious about delivering growth. She's waffling on, trying to distract everybody by throwing a dead cat like a third runway at Heathrow up on the table. And as far as I can tell from the media in the UK this morning, you're all falling for it. Yes, sorry, we'll start here and back to Kate.
Going back to the US.
Oh, Jesus. This is a fucking UK.
I know.
Trump will take care of the US. We need to take care of the UK.
Have you had any interactions with the Trump administration? Have you been talking to them at all?
Jesus, no.
Boeing's future. Do you plan on talking to them or lobbying them?
No, not particularly. I have no business. I've talked to Trump in the past when he invested in the hotel up in Turnberry and in Doonbeg. He called me looking for more flights into Shannon and to Prestwick. So he's well aware of Ryanair. I think Ryanair is one of the key calling cards for the Irish government when they start opening trade talks with the Trump administration. He wants to know, what are you doing for what? Ryanair is buying $35 billion worth of American manufactured aircraft and planting them here in Europe, which is a cesspit of European manufactured aircraft, and we are wiping the floor with all these European manufactured aircraft. So the US is making great aircraft, and we're buying lots of them. I think that's one of the Irish government's key calling cards is look at how much American aircraft Ryanair is buying, which might get them about cover the first 10 seconds of their trade negotiations with the Trump administration. I don't know what happens after that. Kate?
Sticking with the US thing.
Sticking with the US. And
It
growth.
it sounds like the situation is improving with Boeing deliveries. When do you feel like you'll eventually see the light at the end of the tunnel? Can you put a date on it? Do you know when it's going to actually come back to
I think there's light at the end of the tunnel now. You have very competent management over in Seattle. I think Stephanie Pope, she's there on a daily basis. The previous managers were never there. They were flying around the world having lunches, dinners and breakfasts, visiting air shows. She's there. She's on top of the manufacturing. They are getting manufacturing back up and running. I think they will get to 38 aircraft monthly by the end of the summer. But that still leaves us a year behind. Like the 29 aircraft I get for summer 26, I was supposed to originally get in the autumn of 2024. The big issue for us with Boeing is, will you get the MAX 7 and the MAX 10 certified in 2025, and then will we get our first 15 deliveries in the spring of 27? And I think I am growing more cautiously optimistic that they'll hit those dates. We could still be disappointed, and they don't need any more events like the Alaskan door. But the last 12 months, the quality of the fuselages coming out of Wichita has dramatically improved. They're not carrying any defects forward to Seattle, and the quality of what's being made in Seattle has dramatically improved. I think the situation is, so I think we're seeing the green shoots already, but they're only a slip or an accident or a new cock-up away from having another issue. But I think the Biden administration was not helpful to Trump. They politicized the whole Alaskan air door issue. And I think the Trump administration will be a bit more, whoever they appoint to the FAA will be a bit more supportive, I hope. Simon?
A couple of questions. New aircraft. I see that with the new supersonic overture, American Airlines, United and Japan Airlines have ordered it. Ryanair hasn't. Are you in trouble?
I very much doubt it. I think 99.9% of our customers going on the website are looking for the cheapest flight, not the shortest flight. The history of supersonic air travel has been one of repeated losses. This is about the third or fourth go at supersonic air travel. Lots of airlines will order it, but I don't really see... If we could reduce the flight time between Dublin and London from 1 hour and 5 minutes to, say, about 30 minutes, I don't think it'll make a blind bit of difference. Actually, if we could reform ATC, and if you could eliminate air traffic control, staffing delays and cock-ups, it would be just as effective in reducing flight times as supersonic air travel. But no, it's not for Ryanair.
Did you ever go on Concorde?
No, I'm too young. I was too poor and too young.
If I may ask about airports.
Yes.
So there will be more slots becoming available, we think, at Gatwick. Would you go for those? And just for the record, you are not going to be fighting EasyJet for slots at Heathrow.
I'm not sure EasyJet will still be around as an independent airline when the third runway at Heathrow opens up. If it ever opens up in 2045 or 2050, EasyJet will at that stage be a subsidiary of either BA or Air France, probably in the lifetime of the current Labour government. The other, what would I be looking for? So, we would certainly look at Gatwick. We fly, I think, 5 routes in and out of Gatwick. It is an expensive airport, though. It is an airport where the airlines tend to be price takers. I would be much keener on continuing to grow at Stansted, which is a much more cost-efficient airline than airport than Gatwick. But I think we would certainly look to put additional capacity into Gatwick. But our proposal to Rachel Reeves, which was to double our traffic over the next 5 years, wasn't based on getting slots in Gatwick or Heathrow. We can do that at all of the existing airports we currently fly to: Stansted, Luton, Manchester, Birmingham, Liverpool, you name it, Bristol, yada. And that growth is available to the Rachel Reeves and the UK government today. You can have that growth, not this summer because of schedule, but We could start this winter, summer of 26, winter of 26, summer of 27, winter of 27. Here's growth that you can have. All you've got to do is abolish APD. And you send me back a stupid letter and you can't even get the numbers right. You know, a £1 increase in APD is only 1% of an average economy ticket. It just shows either he's never flown or he's certainly never flown with Ryanair. He's obviously a BA customer with their £200 one-way economy airfares. Yes, Simon, sorry.
Very, very quick question. Waterford, southeast.
Who? Oh, yeah.
You started flying there, well, not you personally, 1985, 40th anniversary. Will you be going back to celebrate that? Will you be
Oh, yeah, that's a question for you. Are we going back to Waterford?
Don't think so. There's a nice road up to Dublin. It's not that far away, so there's plenty of flights out of Dublin.
See, I told you she was brighter than me. Waterford, with the motorway network in Ireland, sorry for the board of the West, Waterford is about an hour and a half from Dublin Airport. It's within the catchment of Dublin Airport. It's about an hour from Cork Airport. We have said, and there's a bunch of local lunatics there who are determined to get a government grant to build a jet runway. We said if we get a jet runway and there was a low-cost base, i.e. it was free, we might put 1 or 2 flights a day back in there from London, but really it's in the catchment area of Cork and Dublin, and therefore I think it has no commercial future, economic future, but we wish them well. Yes?
Just follow up on a question that Simon asked.
Not on Waterford, surely.
Notwithstanding your comments on EasyJet, would you have any interest in getting back into Heathrow? You know, even in 2050, 2040, that's not something.
Firstly, we never flew to Heathrow. It's why we have never gone to Heathrow. Heathrow is so incredibly operationally inefficient. When you land in Heathrow, it will take you about an hour and 15 minutes to turn the plane around with all the taxiing around and getting onto stands and getting off stands. We have no interest. Even if it was free, we wouldn't go to Heathrow. Because if we have to take an hour and 15 to turn around a plane, we lose those 2 extra flights per day per aircraft in our operation. So we would never go there, even if it was free. It won't be, because it's owned by a bunch of gazillionaire sovereign wealth funds. And I'm all in favour of sovereign wealth funds when they own and fund Manchester City. But when they're owning and funding airports, frankly, I don't think it makes a lot of difference. We think there's lots of growth, though, available at Gatwick, Luton, and at Stansted, and all those other airports. All it needs is Rachel Reeves in the Treasury to come up with an idea. In fact, she doesn't even come up with the idea because we gave it to her on the 2nd of December. She just needs, with a stroke of a pen, abolish APD and stand back and watch the growth.
Wouldn't your need for UK expansion or London area expansion be satisfied at Stansted anyway with the increased capacity that they're going to have there already after that?
It would. I mean, when they extend the terminal in Stansted, we could take our traffic at Stansted currently is 20 million. We could go up to 30 million. I mean, that would certainly take care of a lot of our growth. But if they abolished APD, I mean, we would certainly want to grow more. I think we could grow. We've been talking to Gatwick about adding more mid-morning, mid-afternoon inbound flights into Gatwick. We could do that because we have 95 bases elsewhere all over Europe. But we're not that. It's not like we have some geographical expansion plan here in the UK. We need London, or we need Manchester, or we need Bristol. We would like to grow all over the UK. We're going to take delivery of 300 new aircraft from Boeing over the next 8 years, and I would like to deploy 100 of those aircraft back into the UK. But they're not coming here while fucking, some dopey chancellor is raising APD under the mistaken view that it's only a £1 increase. It's only 1% of the short haul airfare.
Does that extend to looking at Doncaster? We're constantly told they're in talks with someone.
Well, Doncaster's a hard sell. We used to fly Doncaster. There isn't much of a traffic base there. It's close to Leeds Bradford. Leeds Bradford, again, if it's in the Leeds Bradford catchment area, and Leeds Bradford has grown rapidly with us and Jet2 in the last 5 or 6 years. I think it's a very tough sell for somewhere like Doncaster in the shadow of Leeds Bradford.
Do you expect it to properly reopen then, or do you think?
I wish, a bit like Waterford, I wish them well, but it's certainly not part of our growth plans in the UK. Which isn't to say we wouldn't put some flights back into Doncaster if APD was scrapped. We certainly would look at it. I mean, if it was the price of scrapping APD, I guarantee you we'd put flights into Doncaster. When Louise Hay was the shadow transport spokesperson, of course, so I met her, briefed her, and one of the questions, what can you do for Doncaster? Not a lot, but if abolish
Well,
APD...
she's from South Yorkshire. Right? So
Well, I mean, Doncaster was her area of focus, even as shadow spokesperson.
You said you
Dominic.
wouldn't put any more aircraft into the UK, but you are putting one more in this summer.
We've taken 2 out of others. Net, there's no increase.
And you grew 8% passenger numbers last year. Is that a firm commitment for the future then? Unless APD comes down, no more aircraft in the UK?
No, you'd never make that. I mean, firstly, never say never. And, firm commitments are changeable. Like if EasyJet gets acquired by Air France or BA and they suddenly take some of the aircraft away and they want to grow more, if holes emerge, as when Thomas Cook went into administration, when Monarch, so I would never say never, but we certainly do. The plan for us for the foreseeable future, for the next 2, 3, 4 years, is you have countries across Europe. Sweden. I mean, Sweden was the home of Greta fucking Thunberg and badly educated students. They've abolished their aviation tax, €8 a ticket. We're now adding aircraft up in Arlanda and Stockholm and in Sweden this year. Even they get it. Now, a lot of them didn't spend a lot of time in school, so some of them aren't the brightest sandwiches in the picnic basket. But if they get it, surely some dopey chancellor here who spent 5 years in opposition thinking about how could we grow the UK economy. I mean, at least when Tony Blair and Gordon Brown got elected, wherever it was, 15, 20 years ago, the first thing they did was give Bank of England independence. They had a plan. She's been talking about growth for the last 5 years and clearly hasn't a rashers what she's talking about. 7 months later, no growth, stagnant economy, raising taxes on labour, raising taxes on air travel for an island on the periphery of Europe, like nutty fucking stuff. But now she's come up with a plan. Third runway in Heathrow by 2050. The GO and the Office for Public, whatever it is. It'll add 0.5% to GNP by 2050. Whoopity-doo. We need a better plan than that. We've given you a plan. We sent it to you in writing on the 2nd of December. Implement it. But otherwise, shut up and stop pretending that a third runway in Heathrow is going to deliver you growth. It isn't. Anybody else? Yes.
Given your comments on sustainable aviation fuel and just surpassing the 1.5 degrees target last year, do you really have no concerns about expansion of aviation? Point taken as 2%. Is now really the time for large expansion of the aviation sector?
Absolutely. All this aviation is going to take place on aircraft that are about 50% more fuel efficient, 50% less CO2. We can now have growth in aviation with less emissions on a per passenger basis. And aviation only accounts for 2% of Europe's CO2 emissions anyway. But the bizarre thing in Europe, and we were taxing aviation, APD in the UK, an emissions trading system across Europe, we're only taxing short-haul flying. And yet long-haul flights to and from Europe account for 53% of Europe aviation's CO2 emissions, and we exempt them. So we exempt the richest people, the non-Europeans are all exempt, and we're taxing the shit out of Europeans, including the UK, going on short-haul flights and holidays to Spain and Malaga and Greece and whatever else it is. Not that it has any effect on emissions or on, climate change or global warming at all. We have got to get back to being more competitive. I think one of the reasons the Greens have done so badly in elections all over Europe for the last 18 months is people are pissed off being told they have to pay higher taxes to solve something in 2050. The Chinese are ignoring it. There's fucking Russians invaded Ukraine. They weren't too worried about fucking net zero targets in 2050. 100,000 people are dying on a war in Europe. So let's have less of the net. It's not that we shouldn't decarbonise. We should continue to decarbonise, but we should do it by investing in new technology, not by fucking taxing the shit out of ordinary citizens or ordinary families. And that's the bit that Rachel Rubbish needs to cotton on to. Abolish APD and stand back and watch the growth arrive. Another question there? From the American wing here. But go on.
I'm Canadian, but...
No, 50-second state. Trump thinks you're American.
I know you were already in Brussels earlier, but I wanted to ask about your expectations of European politicians. You talked about how most European airlines use Airbus planes.
Yeah.
How do you expect that to play out politically? Do you think that the EU has to do more to kind of address the challenges that the US will face?
Yes, and I think they will. I think there's a sea change going on in Brussels at the moment. Now, I might be overly optimistic, but you had something like the Draghi report this summer, which highlighted just how inefficient and uncompetitive Europe has been. The Greens have been voted out of the European Parliament, so that whole Green lobby is in retreat. And I think there's a new commission there. I met the Greek Commissioner for Transport, the Irish Commissioner for Justice and Consumer Affairs. I think there's a real dynamism among this new commission to deliver growth, to deliver competitiveness. I think Trump scares the shit out of everybody. And he's going to do things that will be very radical. You know, we're sending back the immigrants to Colombia. The Colombians say, no, you're not. 25% tariffs, 50% tariffs. And lo and behold, the Colombians are offering to fly the illegal, whatever you call them, the illegal alien or illegal immigrants back to Colombia. The only way to deal with Trump is for Europe and the UK to get more efficient. I think the great tragedy of Brexit, and I have been an anti-Brexiteer while I live and breathe, is the UK economy. Fundamentally, the UK economy, if it really does want to grow, it needs an effective trade deal with its largest trading partner, which is the EU. It's nuts, all these, Brexiteer idiots running around, Farage and all, Brexit was right, it's the way it was implemented. It was implemented by the hard Brexiteers. It was implemented by Johnson, Rees-Mogg and all the rest of it. No, we'll have no deal. They were fucking clueless. They never had a plan. So I would want to see the UK have a trade deal with Europe. Europe needs to get much more competitive, and aviation is a good place to start. One of the great successes of the single market in Europe has been deregulation of air travel. We moved away from the old protected flag carriers, bilateral trade agreements, rapaciously high airfares. When I was growing up in Ireland in the 70s, the 60s and 70s, nobody flew. You couldn't afford to fly. We were all on boats, ferries to and from the UK. Now, kids under the age of 30 or 40, kids like her, they've never seen a fucking airfare at 300 and 400 quid unless they work in the UK Treasury, in which case they're paying £200 one-way economy airfares. And that's great. But build on those successes. Stop taxing fucking air travel. And this nonsense, you don't pay tax on fuel. We don't pay tax on fuel because there's no way for governments to grab hold of fuel. You fly to a different country where you uplift in one area, and that's why we don't pay tax on fuel. The benefit of that goes to consumers and families. The benefit and the growth benefit of cheap air travel and tourism is spread right across the regions and right across each country. We are one of the great industries that is good at sustaining regional development. And yet, which was the first industry that she decided to raise fucking taxes on in her growth budget 6 months ago? Air travel. Made no sense. But then, a lot of what she says doesn't make any sense. And certainly, as that third runway at Heathrow doesn't make any sense delivering growth, Kate.
Do you have any timeline on when you could return flying to Ukraine?
As soon, 6 weeks after the skies reopen. We have a plan there. We're going to open about 24 routes back into Lviv and Kiev. It'll take us about 6 weeks to fill the flights. What we're going to do is we have aircraft, say, in Stansted, Charleroi, Paris, Italy, Dublin, all over Europe. We'll cancel one or two of the frequencies that they do currently, say, to the Canaries or to somewhere else in Europe, and we'll pivot those planes back into Kiev and Lviv. We expect to do it within 4 to 6 weeks of the skies reopening. Ultimately, it'll need some kind of ceasefire because EASA won't allow anything to fly over there unless they have some kind of reasonable certainty that there won't be missiles flying. But we will be back flying within 6 weeks of the skies reopening.
Any sort of hints as to whether that's going to be this year or?
I mean, I would very much hope it's this year. I think one of the things Trump can deliver, hopefully, would be, an earlier resolution of Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. There is now 14 million Ukrainians displaced all over Europe. There will be enormous traffic flows, even in the very early days of reuniting friends and families. I've been to Kiev. The 10-hour fucking train journey from fucking Sheffield is painful. It's not the way, but so not alone would you be reuniting families immediately, then there'd be huge amounts of inbound investment in Ukraine rebuilding what's left of the Ukraine economy. And we will be at front and centre of that. We will be Ukraine, the first and the biggest airline back in Ukraine when it reopens. Yes, sir.
And when you go to Ukrainian airports, if they are now Russian airports, like some region?
No, I mean, look. In reality, the Russians have destroyed some of the Kherson, some of the airports in eastern and in southern in the Donbass have been destroyed. They bombed the shit out of them. So there's no infrastructure there. If they are Russian held or they're Russian, I don't excuse my terminology, but if they're within. If there's a ceasefire and the Russians get to hold on to what they have and it becomes part of Russia, we're not flying there. It won't be part of the EU or EU open skies. Whatever Ukraine, the Republic of Ukraine, has control or autonomy over, will open up. Some of those airports have been damaged. Odessa has been damaged. I don't think that will reopen on the first day. But Kiev and Lviv, they have done remarkable work to keep those airports opening and functioning. I mean, they run the baggage carousels in Kiev every week to make sure that everything is working. They're ready to go. We just need to be able to get the skies open, safely reopen. I think there would be an enormous surge of both visitors back into Ukraine and also investment into Ukraine. And Ukraine needs all the help and investment support we can give it. Any other questions? Ben, yeah. You're very welcome.
Did you say you've been to Kiev?
Yeah.
And what were you doing there? Were you
meeting the Minister for Infrastructure, met the three airports, Odessa, Kiev, Lviv. We toured around Kiev airport and we were negotiating or setting out a kind of a radical air transport recovery plan for a post-war Ukraine.
When was that?
July of last year. Anybody else? Sky, ITV, PA? No? Okay. Thanks very much, everybody. Appreciate your time. And if you're talking to Rachel Reeves, ask her when is the third runway at Heathrow going to open? I think you'll be surprised that if it's not in the next 5 years. And failing that, then ask her why she's not scrapping APD. Thank you very much. I'm doing Bloomberg now. Is that okay? I come back in the second time you want to.